The Objective News Network, the Chinese balloon debacle. Is anybody out there listening? Did anybody out there see Senator Chuck Schumer on ABC's This Week over the weekend? Senator Schumer said that he was confident that the Biden administration has handled the Chinese balloon fiasco well. The first incidents of Chinese surveillance came to light when the U.S. military downed a surveillance balloon over the Atlantic Ocean after it was allowed to drift over Canada and then across the entire United States for almost 1 week before shooting it down. Since then, there have been 2 additional shootings of balloons and an unexplained radar pinging over Montana. The Biden administration's response to the Chinese spy surveillance and the revelation that the Chinese communists have been running a secret worldwide surveillance program of countries of interest sparked this statement by Senator Schumer, and I quote, "Look, I think the Chinese were humiliated. I think the Chinese were caught lying, and I think it's a real setback for them," close quote. Some observers would contend that this is quite a remarkable statement, especially coming from one of the most senior leaders of the United States Senate. This is because the Chinese exist in a completely different culture than ours. They are a nation that acts on the total authoritarian consensus of the Communist Party. The balloon they sent over the United States was remotely maneuverable. The Chinese knew exactly where the balloon was going because they flew it there. The Chinese intentional incursion of U.S. sovereignty was, in fact, intentional. Now, under the circumstances, and with due respect for Senator Schumer, we must all ask him what the heck he is thinking. The Chinese humiliated? A real setback for the Chinese? Getting caught when you are doing bad things may be an embarrassment, at least in most civilized countries that do not have plans to dominate the world. But in the People's Republic of China, they do not possess a conscience in any Judeo-Christian sense of the words. No, what the Communist Chinese are doing is intentional and part of a much bigger plan. China's strategy in their 14th five-year policy aims to bolster China's national security system with an announced 6.8% rise in military spending. In 2021, this PRC spent about $293.35 billion on the military, which was a 13.71% increase from the year before, 2020. In the same year, the U.S. spent about $800.67 billion on the military, which was a 2.86% increase from the previous year, 2020. Today, the PRC spends about 1.3% of its GDP, or gross domestic product, on the military. The U.S. spends about 3.3% of its GDP on the military. Military expenditures by the PRC indicate a shift from China's previous focus on using trade and economics to further China's interests globally, now to include military power as a cornerstone to influence the rest of the world. Just a few days ago, the commander of the U.S. Strategic Command, which oversees our nuclear forces, wrote to the Senate and House Armed Services Committees, saying, and I quote, "The number of land-based and mobile ICBM launchers in China exceeds the number of ICBM launchers in the United States," close quote. On authentication, we find this piece by the American Federation of Science telling us the number of Chinese ICBM launchers reported by the Pentagon over the past 3 years has increased significantly from 100 launchers at the end of 2020 to 300 launchers at the end of 2021 to now more than 450 launchers as of October 2022. This is an increase of 350 launchers in only 3 years, close quote. The same article goes on to state, and I quote, "The worst-case projection about China's nuclear expansion assumes that it will fill everything with missiles, with multiple warheads. In reality, it is unknown how many of the new silos will be filled with missiles, how many warheads each missile will carry, and how many warheads China can actually produce over the next decade." In any event, Senator Schumer's attempts to sugarcoat the ongoing national security crisis with China is not just misinformed by the facts, but also sends a dangerous signal to our adversaries all over the world that our kit bag of tools is limited to public whining in the face of wanton aggression and demanding apologies that will never come from the Chinese, just as the Chinese themselves expect from the West. The lesson for us in America is that only strong and consistent leadership, willing to draw a line somewhere with the PRC in ways that are uniquely understandable to them in terms of the Chinese culture, will cause them to reconsider their quest for global supremacy. To the Chinese mind, we, the United States, are in fact already at war with them, no matter how long it takes to win. The Chinese think strategically. They know that the U.S. is engaged in a prolonged war in Ukraine that is forcing the U.S. to expend major stockpiles of the type of advanced weapon systems we must have to win in a war against China. The Chinese know that the U.S. no longer has a draft, and the prodigious weakening in the numbers of our active military personnel because of the lack of fitness and mental acuity of so many American young men. They know how easily our critical infrastructures such as energy, military, production, microchip manufacture, transportation, and so much more can be taken down with relative ease by an adversary, and so it seems, even using balloons. It is time to realize that the Chinese may be shifting their strategy based on simple human numbers. In 2021, there were 1.412 billion people in the PRC. In 2021, there were, by contrast, only 331.9 million, that's with an M, people in the United States. In 2022, China had the largest armed forces in the world, with about 2 million active duty soldiers. In 2022, there were only 1.3 million active duty military personnel in the United States. Given these facts, It may be time for our leaders to develop a long-term strategy on China, work toward a consensus on the strategy, and then begin to implement it. It is what it is for February 13th, 2023. This is John Hnatio reporting for the Objective News Network. At ONN, we are here to give you the unvarnished truth. Please subscribe and ask your family and friends to watch. Thank you.